Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we are going to be looking at repairing the arms on these vintage Kenner Centurions figures. In front of me here you can see I have the three main characters from the Centurions toy line. That is Jake Rockwell in yellow, we have Max Ray in green, and we have Ace McLeod in blue. Now this toy line suffers with one very common problem, and that is the fact that the arms break and fall off. You can see here, in fact all three of these have the right arm broken. Now I did do a video about fixing these maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I used a screw and sort of broke apart the body to fix this. And recently I was contacted by Nick, who is a sort of long time subscriber and supporter of toy-polloi, asking me if I had any sort of new or different ways of fixing them, and I have to say I do. So today's video is going to be a bit of a revisited video, so we're going to be going back on what I did for the original fix, and we'll be trying something new and seeing what we can do. Now these figures have all been very kindly donated to me, because Centurions is not actually a toy line I collect. So initially I do need to say a massive thank you to Nick, Simon and Anthony, all members of the Centurions Power Extreme Facebook group. I will put a link to that in the description. And I also need to say a big thank you straight away to Matthew, who a while back sent me another of these figures with a suggestion of a couple of bits of Lego that we could use. So we are going to be using those today to fix up at least one of these figures, and we'll try something different. First up though, all of these figures need a very good wash. These are sort of well-loved toys and a tad on the dirty side. So you can see there's a lot of dirt and grime sort of stuck inside there. So the first thing I'm going to do is give them a good wash using some hot soapy water. Now none of these toys have any metal in them, so you can actually submerge them fully in the water, and I will use a toothbrush to sort of get into all the nooks and crannies to get all of the dirt out. And the reason I know that there is no metal inside these figures is I have another one here that is already in pieces, so I've already checked out what's inside it. Sometimes when I'm fixing toys it's very useful to have a completely broken one, so that you can actually see how the thing is constructed. It means that you can take a look at what part to use and what pieces are inside, and also check that there's nothing that's going to rust. And that is what I've done on this one, just to make sure there's nothing inside that I need to worry about, and there isn't. So let's get these cleaned up and then we can start fixing them. Right, after a good wash they are looking a whole lot better. All the dirt and grime has gone from them, they just look a lot nicer. Hot soapy water and a toothbrush is really the best way for cleaning pretty much all toys, I find, so it's the first thing I do whenever I get stuff in to fix up. Now you can see that Ace McLeod is a little bit sort of sun damaged and faded. I've found with blue plastic is the worst if you try to sort of de-yellow it, so I'm not actually going to bother doing anything with him. It only affects certain types of plastic, so you can see it's affected his chest and his upper legs. The arms and the lower legs are made of a different plastic, so it hasn't affected that at all. But blue plastic, yeah, when you try and de-yellow it, it can go a very odd colour and very cloudy. So in this instance, we're just going to leave that as is. But what we really need to do is fix the arms. Now let's first discuss the reason that these arms break, and it's actually fairly obvious when you sort of take a closer look at the toys. You can see on this one, if I rotate his arm up, it has snapped off. There should be a disc of plastic here, and that would enable the arm to move in multiple directions, because the way these figures are designed, the arms don't just rotate around like this, they have the ability to rotate out, but they can only rotate out in this position, so sort of horizontally. So if I rotate this arm up, you cannot rotate this down. If I rotate it sort of forwards, you cannot rotate it out. If you rotate the arm so it's pretty much vertically down, you can then rotate the arm up. And that is the reason why these figures break, because any child will sort of put the arm in this position and then try and force the arm up. And if you do that a few times, or at the wrong angle, or try and sort of force it in any way, it will snap the bits of plastic that hold the arm on. So it is a clever design, but it is liable for this piece to break, especially if you handle them wrong. This new way that I have of fixing these arms on uses a bit of Lego that wasn't actually available when I did the last video. I think it came out maybe a sort of a month or so beforehand, and I hadn't heard of it. But recently, as I say, Matthew sort of dropped me a line saying, had I seen these pieces, and he thought they would be ideal for fixing the arm. And these are they're two pieces. You have this little sort of ball joint piece. So you've got a standard piece of Lego with a sort of little indent on it, and this thing that looks like a little grey microphone. I'll put the numbers of the Lego pieces on the screen below so you can see what they are. So you get these two pieces that clip together, and you end up with quite a nice ball joint. There are other pieces that clip into this one. You can see here these Lego sort of Technic pins that again have the same ball joint on. I've used these quite a lot in other fixes. They're very good for fixing things like Jabba the Hutt's arms, and they also clip into these. There are different versions of this clippy piece as well, so lots of options out there. But for this particular fix, we're going to be using these two pieces. This one we will be attaching to the arm, and this one we will be modifying and sticking inside the body. And for that, we don't actually have to take the body apart. We can actually do everything directly into the armhole there. You can see there's a little gap, but as luck would have it, this piece almost perfectly fits inside the gap there. You have to force it a little bit, but you can see that clips in. So we just got to modify the back of that so that it will fit in, and then we can glue it in place, so you don't have to split the body apart, which is a bit of a bonus. But the one limitation with this method is that you will lose the ability for the arm to rotate out in this vertical position. It will still rotate around like that, but you will no longer be able to do that. So it's a sort of, you win in some ways and you lose in others. So let's go ahead and do this, and then you can see exactly what it looks like, and I'll show you the limitations once it's all in place. To start with, we have to remove the remnants of the old fixing piece. So you can see here, this is the broken part. We've lost the top and the bottom of it. I'm just going to use a pair of plastic nippers to cut this off. You can see there is a bit sort of sticking out from the ball of the arm. We need to cut this almost flush with the arm, so we'll be cutting most of this away. Plastic nippers are ideal for doing this. I can just push these over the top, and then I can just cut down and cut through the plastic like so. I've not managed to do that particularly neatly, but it doesn't really matter at this stage. We can still trim this down like that, and you can see that's ended up with a fairly flush surface. Anything that's left, I can use a little file, and we'll just file that so that it's nice and flat. Now that that's done, we can start to insert this piece of Lego, and we're going to insert pretty much all of it into the arm. We could chop off a bit of the end, but actually you might as well insert everything so it's a good and strong sort of fixing. Lego pieces are always a standard size, so this is 3mm, so we're going to have to drill a 3mm hole directly into the ball joint there. I'll start by drilling a pilot hole, which will be a smaller size. I'm actually going to be drilling a 1.5mm hole just to get everything lined up, and then I will drill a 3mm hole on top of that. We can insert that in and glue it in place, and basically you just want the ball part of this piece sticking out of the end. You don't want much of the little post. It's just going to be the ball joint sticking out, and that way when we attach it to the figure, the arm will sit quite flush to the body. So let's get these holes drilled, and we'll insert the piece of Lego. Right, so there's the hole drilled, and we can now insert this piece of Lego into the hole. I'll just push it in place like so. And there you go. You can see we have the piece of Lego quite firmly in there. I haven't actually put any glue on that at all, but it's still quite firm. The plastic that's used for the arm has actually got quite a bit of sort of give to it, I suppose. So when you're drilling in, it sort of moves out of the way, and this forms quite a nice tight bond. So let's just try that with the piece of Lego on. And there you go. Yeah, that is working. We've now got quite a good sort of ball joint there. I'm quite happy with how that has attached, so I may just put a little bit of super glue in there just to hold it in place, but for now we can leave that as is, and we can get to work on modifying this so that it sits inside the body. But for now, that joint is looking good. Now we need to modify this piece of Lego to sit inside the body, and as you can see, there is a hole that's fairly sort of similar shape to this piece, so really we're going to have to modify it very little to get it to fit. You can just about force it in the other way round, so you can sort of get an idea of how far back it sits. I think we will need to modify some parts of it because you can see there are little bars inside that take up a bit of space. So first thing to do really is just cut the back of this off. We don't need any of this piece here. So again, plastic nippers come into action and we can chop those off like so, nice and easily, and we're just left with this piece, which is the bit that you really need, because you can see that does fit onto the ball joint that we've already attached to his arm. And now we can just try and slot that in, see how far back it goes. You want it to sort of sit quite flush. You can see there it's raised out a little bit, and I think if I put the arm in, you can see how far out of the body it sits. It sort of works okay, but you want it a little bit flusher. So we're going to have to modify that a bit. So if I just take that piece out again, I think I might need a screwdriver or something to get that out now because it's fully wedged in. I think we're going to just do a little bit of more modifying of the edge of that and see if we can get that to sit a little bit further back in. I don't think it should be any issue to do that. Lego is very easy to work with, as I've shown you. So let's do a few more modifications and we'll see how flush we can get that to sit. Okay, I've made a few little more modifications to this piece of Lego. So I've basically taken the corners off it. If we look at the original piece there, you can see it's got quite sharp corners. I've cut those back, so it's now more of a C shape, I suppose. If we turn it up that way, you can see it does look like a C. And I've also just slightly sanded the back of it to make it a bit flatter. And this now seems to fit very snugly into the armhole. So I've got a pair of pliers here because it's quite fiddly to hold this and push it in place at the same time. So you can see there's the hole. We will push this in, line everything up and push together. There we go. You can see that slots in quite nicely. I'm just going to move it about because it needs to be as far up to the top as you can possibly get it and as flush as can be, and that looks really quite flush there. And there's so much friction between the bits of plastic, I don't actually think this will even need gluing. You can just sort of hold it in place. So I haven't glued the bit onto the arm and I haven't glued this bit in place here. But look at that, the arm fits in quite nicely and is fully mobile again. You can put it into any position. As I say, you can no longer rotate this arm out like that, but I don't think that really makes that much difference to the toy. It's still fully poseable. You're just limited on that one little bit of motion there that these figures can only do when the arm is vertical anyway. So I think that is a pretty good fix and very easy to do. And the fact you don't need glue, I'm really quite chuffed with that. It works a treat. I've just made the same modifications to the other two figures, and unlike Max Ray, both of these figures, the actual Lego piece that goes inside the body is very loose. So I think the bodies are constructed slightly differently. So you can see here is the same piece that I've modified, and if I drop that in there, I'll just get it in place. You can see that that actually falls out. It's not held in by any sort of friction or sort of compression. So we will be having to glue these in. I've already glued the one here on Jake Rockwell. You can see it's just glued in place there. A little bit of super glue on the back of that holds it in place very nicely. So we will do the same now to Ace McLeod, and I'll show you what you need to do. I've got some super glue here. I'm just going to get a pair of pliers to hold this piece of Lego because it is a little bit on the small side, and by the time you've got glue on it, it becomes a little bit more awkward to hold. So I'm going to get the super glue here. I'm just going to put a little bit on the angled surface that I created there, a little bit on the top, a little bit on that, and then another little bit there. You don't need a huge amount because there is quite a lot of surface area in there. I'm just going to push this into place using the pliers and then sort of reposition it so it is exactly where I want it to be, like so, and then we can let that glue set and give that sort of 10 minutes and it will be fine to use and fine for his arm to be reattached. And here we have the finished 3 figures, so you can see all of them have their arms back in place and all of them now rotate and move freely. And you can see I can pull that one out, and if we wanted to, we could actually start swapping some of these arms. So you can see they do swap onto each other, so you can make quite a nice sort of different colour combinations of the figures. So is this fix better than the original one that I showed? I have to say I think it is, just because it involves much less destruction of the figure itself. The other fix does give you the full motion of the arm, so you would have been able to move them out to the sides, but it does involve splitting the figure apart, and that, as I showed in my previous video, is quite a lot of work and does cause quite a bit of damage to these figures just because they are glued very firmly in place. Whereas this new method is a lot easier to do. It doesn't involve breaking the figures apart, and really the loss of being able to move the arms outwards when they are in the vertical position I think is a very small thing to lose. The rest of the fix does work incredibly well, and as I just showed, it means that you can actually swap the arms about, so if you wanted to do different colour combinations you could. So I tend to think that this fix is better than the one that I showed previously, and that's why it's always worth checking out the Lego site, because you never know what new pieces they are producing, and in this instance this piece of Lego wasn't around when I first did this fix. If it had been, I think I would have used it straight away because it certainly does work very nicely. Now I do need to say a massive thank you to everybody who helped out in this project, and do check out the Centurions Facebook group. I will put a link to that in the description. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi.
Now, after filming this video, I thought a little bit more about the fact that you couldn't rotate the arm out to the side as you can when it's in the original sort of setup. So this one you can see here is an unbroken arm and it does rotate out. This is the Lego arm and we cannot rotate it out. But I thought there must be a way of making this actually work. And I've come up with a very simple solution that means that you can rotate this arm out, because I know some of the armour when it's attached to these figures means that you need the arms out in that position. And the way to do that is actually just to drill a second hole. So you can see here I've drilled another hole in the arm just slightly further up and at a slight angle. You can see here that this is the piece of Lego. In this instance it hasn't actually come out when I've taken the arm off, but you can see there that is the piece of Lego. So all we do to get the arm into that slightly angled position is take the Lego piece out and put it into the hole that is now at the top. This hole is still a little bit stiff, so you can see I can push that in, and now when we put this arm in, you can see it is angled and it matches the arm on the other side. So it's a very simple addition to do to this change, and still doesn't require you to take the body apart. All you've got to do is drill one extra hole slightly above the one that we drilled in the first instance, and you'll get the same effect. So there we go, there's a slight addition to this modification that means you can get the arms posed in the same way that they were posed originally.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.